everybody, it's Peggy. I'm back again with another video, and today I am about to do the quilting step on my quilt. Quilts get quilting. Who knew? Okay, so I'm just going to get the camera right down here. I'm working from a fairly small area. I mean, it's always nice when you're watching videos where somebody comes from has a bigger studio, right? And I don't have that, so this is kind of one of the reasons why I want to show it. It's the warts and all process, because when you're working with a smaller space, you have to be a little more organized, dealing with stuff that's a little bit more fiddly. I've got one quilting on. I'm going to do it Michael Jackson style. One quilting glove. I might or might not put another one, grab another one if I feel like I need it, but I have dry skin issues, which is no. If you have dry skin issues, lots of moisturizer, quilting gloves, do what you got to do. Okay, so I have chosen this nice, whoops, I'm going to get back here in the camera. I've chosen this nice neutral beige for my quilting thread, because it's just really not going to show up on the gold here. And I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to do a straight stitch. One of the things that you have to do in your quilting is you have to plan your strategy before you even start, okay? So I am going to stitch in the ditch all the way here to the edges here, go around that. There's a corner here. I'll come down. I'm going to stitch in the ditch for these sections here. And then I'm going to do light quilting. Light. I'm calling it light. I don't know if it has a term for it or not. This area out here is 24 by 30. This is a 24 by 30 inch piece. That's just all one piece that's been sewn on to these 6-inch strips here. Now the reason why I'm explaining it, because I make a lot of noise about what your quilt batting is rated for. This quilt batting is rated for 10 inches. So technically I need one line and another line and then 2 more lines this way, and I can actually stop. I don't have to go overboard. What happens, okay, this is rated for 10 inches. As long as there's a stitch line every 10 inches, like one here, 10, within 10 inches here, I can do as much as I want, but I can do as little as I want on this, because what happens is when I wash this, the quilting won't slump. Now, if you have quilting that's rated for 4 inches, then if you're 6 inches and 6 inches, this area in the middle has a really high chance of slumping, forming a lump on, breaking apart inside and forming a lump on one side and stuff like that. This is a much higher rated quilting. Not that I'm pointing to the cotton, and I'm actually referring to the batting that's inside. Okay, I'm referring to this batting here. This layer here has to be stitched down. This layer, the batting that I'm using is rated for 10 inches, which means I can get away with doing a lot less quilting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do straight stitching here, and we'll look at a bit of that. And then I'm going to do light swirl. I'm still going to be within 10 inches, but I'm going to do light swirling. There are people who come in and they do like 1/4-inch circles, and they will do an entire piece like this in 1/4-inch circles. And if that's what you're into, absolutely go for it. And if that's not what you're into, get a higher rated quilting, get a higher rated batting so you can do less of it. Some people find this stage, this stage very, very meditative, and it's their favorite stage. As a matter of fact, there are people who will go on places like Etsy looking for just the quilt top so that they can make their own sandwich, which is what this is when it's all prepped for quilting. You got your backing is already in place, but not a safety pinned in place. The backing is already in place. The batting is already in place. The top is already in place. There are people who go out and buy these tops pre-done and then do the quilting part themselves, because it's the part that they really, really love. So, some people love to make the tops, hate to do the quilting, love to do the quilting, hate to do the tops. I love to do the tops. I love my quilt as you go method, which this is not it today, is the thing. So what I've done is I've gotten a couple of bobbins ready to go. This is just a basic beige thread, because where was it? I got out a yellow. Oh, here we go. I was going between this basic beige and this yellow, and the differences are subtle enough that once you spread it out to a single thread, you literally can't spot the difference it's indiscernible, and I just happen to have more of the beige. So it's like, okay, well, I'll save the schmancy color, stick with the basic color, get my thing done. Like I said, I'm planning on not really going over the. I'm not sewing into any of this. I'm gonna stitch it down from both ends, and not worry about the rest of it. Okay, so this is my spare bobbin. When you are prepping for quilting, make sure you have 2 or 3 bobbins ready to go. It's easier to stop and change out just the bobbin than having to stop, take out the bobbin, unthread your machine, make a new bobbin, rethread your machine. Like, it's a lot more tedious, but then again, it's a personal choice. I mean, if you're limited on thread, I sew for a living, I always have extra thread laying around, right? If I make too many bobbins, I'll just end up using it up the next time I do some paler fabrics that need a lighter top stitching. Took a drink, trying not to belch. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so what I've got going on over here, we're going to move the machine. This is mostly, I'm not necessarily going to have a great opportunity to show you the entire quilting process because I'm working with a much smaller area. And don't forget, if the actual part of the quilting process pisses you off, irritates you, sorry, I got to move this around a little bit because I'm not getting good light. If the actual part of the quilting process pisses you off or irritates you or intimidates you, maybe you just simply don't have the time for it, it's a pricey option. But there are, okay, I think it's pricey based on what I prefer to do and not do, but there are services where you get your quilt to this stage, take it in, like you would just do everything, pin it up, do all the thing. No, you don't pin it. You would call and ask first, okay? And you would just take in your top, take in your batting, cut to the dimension. They will tell you to cut to a certain dimension, and then your backing, and they will take care of the rest and send you back they will send you back a top stitched quilt, and then you just have to square it up and finish it. And sometimes they'll even finish it for you. There is always somebody who is willing to make your project a success for the right price. Now, right now I have my walking foot on. Everything's safety pinned down, and that, okay, yes, it matters that it's safety pinned down. Everything is safety pinned down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the method, because this is a bigger project. I'm going to do the method where that is just that is just a quirk of this machine. Whenever I change the thread, I have to pop that back up into place. Okay, so I'm going to manually do a single stitch, okay, and then I'm going to pull. I'm going to keep pulling apparently. This is how you can start your thread. I don't know if you guys are getting a good look or not, but this is how you can start your thread. You go do a manual stitch down. I'm just running it by hand at the end. I haven't even put my foot on. My foot's not even anywhere near the pedal. So you put your stitch down. You forget where you put your tweezers. There's a pair of tweezers. I will tell you right now, makeup tweezers are awesome. Where'd it go? There it is. And then you just pull. Basically what happens is, when you drop the needle down, the racer in the inside spins in a circle, catches the bobbin, and makes a stitch. Well, if you do it once, only once, manually, and then lightly tug the top thread back out, then the bobbin will come with you. Because don't forget, this is going to be covered with the binding, and now the loose end of the thread is going to be inside of that, and nobody's going to see it. So back stitch. So I am using my walking foot. You don't have to use the walking foot, but I am doing a straight line. So why not? I've got a couple stitches in, so I can now trim off the excess thread. Now I have got, let's go over here. Let's see what this looks like. Let's see what I can do to show you what's going on. This is my quilt in my lap. This is everything bundled up in my lap. This is the edge, going to the one edge, and I'm going to like roll it in loosely as I go so it doesn't get in the way. It's got it all stuffed through this arm. Let's get over here. I'm trying not to give you guys vertigo, but I'm also trying to get this done quickly so I can get to focusing on main part of the job. Yeah, let's pick this angle for right now. Okay, so I'm using my walking foot. I could have had this already rolled up and ready to go. What you can do, I can roll this up to get it out of the way because I'm doing my center first. I'm doing my center first with the walking foot, and then I'm going to be changing feet and then doing the rest. If your quilt, if you just want to do straight lines, a walking foot is perfect. And you just take your time. These are big, these are clunky, these are in the way. If this is too clunky for you, then you can roll this in, and you can even like pin it, just pin that to that. Do whatever you need to do. I've seen some people, I don't know how they manage it, but there's a type of chip clip. There's different types of clips and stuff you can add that are going to really help hold it in place. Don't forget, before I came over here, there are safety pins everywhere in this to hold this in place so it's not going to shift or slide apart. That's a really important step. I did a very quick, short video on how that looks when you're working with within a small space. Obviously, if you've got a big space, you're good to go. Spread it out, but put in lots and lots of pins. Make sure everything's held down. You don't need a big, so I'm just going to do that. It's going to be a lot easier when I get to the next part, because when I get to the next part, I can like line it up per section and just do this quarter, then this one down here, and this one down here. This is just the big step where I'm going to be going across the whole thing. Remove your safety pins as you go. Come on. Sometimes safety pins, these are quilting pins. They're actually not that expensive. They're not regular safety pins, and I'm just not having the best time with my hand-eye coordination today. This is all me being clumsy. Okay. So what we've got here is a quilting safety pin. This is a pretty dry and boring. This is a pretty dry and boring step. This is to explain it. That is. So this is a quilting pin, and they have a bend in them so that you can go in, snag everything, bring it back up, all in one step, because you want to be able to do this as flat as possible. Regular safety pins will work. A regular safety pin will work, but they're more fiddly to use. And these, I bought these Clever Clips, is what they're called, as the brand. I bought these, oh no, it is my regular clips. I bought these safety pins, I believe a pack of like 100 or 200 for like $10. They're not that expensive. So you just take your time, make sure each section is smoothed out, reach under if you have to and check the back, take your time, and then just go. I gotta get a second glove. My hand is not gripping. Let's get a clean one. I wash them as I go, but because I use them so much of the time, you know, this is black, and over time it'll leave a little, the fingertips act like an eraser and pick up some of the color. And because I use dark colors so much, you know, most of my linings for my bags are black. No, not all of them. Sometimes I do them in white. A lot of the backings of my claws are black, so these get stained up pretty quickly. But just keep in mind how many hours I have to wear, how many hours and washes, and I'm also breaking down the rubber as I go. But how much time it takes? Yeah, it's not. They're not erasing color off. They're not going to take the color off of your thing. The reason why my gloves are so filthy looking is because it's black staining, because I use so much black fabric. And I sew for a living, so we're talking hours of sewing every day. But anyway, you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference. Okay, this I got from my local fabric store. They were, I think, $15 Canadian for a pair, so I just waited for a sale. They go a little higher up. They fit a little tighter. These are Amazon. This pair I got from Amazon, and once everything relaxes into place, this starts sliding down my hand a little bit. I probably needed a medium and not a small. So that's kind of the difference. They both work the exact same. If price matters, get these one. They still work as intended. They just don't look as pretty. They kind of feel a little funny, and but they're not actually going to fall off or anything like that. So anyway, this is just tips and tricks time while I sew some stuff. I'm not gonna quilt the entire thing on camera because for this particular project, there's also a trick if you use flannelette, which a lot of people use to make diapers. That's one of its biggest claims to fame. Anyway, if you use flannelette, you'll get a lighter blanket, but you do not need to quilt them at all because it's a fabric in and of itself. Of course, if you have a big enough piece, you can also back your quilt with an old blanket. You know, maybe you have an old picnic blanket laying around that's the right size. You can back it with just regular fleece. You can just back it with fleece and just do a 2-layer and no sandwich at all. There are ways, and maybe that's something I can explore in future videos. There are ways to avoid the need for spending the time top stitching and quilting and stuff like that. And if you are learning along with me as I try my best to improve my quilting skills, if you are playing learn with me and sewing along, then that is something to consider, is that there are other, if you discover that you do not like this part, it's like, oh my God, it's huge, it's clunky, it's this, it's that. If you discover that you just simply don't like this part of doing it, there's ways to get around it. Okay, so I'm going to but this design is, this is a Bridget's cross. So this piece coming in here does not line up with that piece, and this doesn't line up with that. That does not line up with that. That's intentional, which is fine. It's exactly, it's intentional. And if you haven't seen before, then there's a couple, I've already shown this design in general in a couple of other videos. It's called a Bridget's cross. So when you're doing this kind of a thing, leave your needle down. If you are, oh wow, this is intimidating. Oh wow, I don't want to wreck anything. You can actually stop here, right? Take your needle out, and then move it, and then just start a new line from here. It's not gonna wreck anything. Just make sure that you're double checking as you go, that no bubbles or folds or crimp or creases. It's kind of a bit of a trust exercise that your bottom is staying flat as you go, and as long as you just come in, you should be able to feel it or see it if something is bumped up underneath. Lots of pins, so I know it's being held. Continue. So this is called Stitch in the Ditch, for anybody who doesn't know. For anybody who does know, deal with it. I'm talking to the people who don't know. Anyway, this is called Stitch in the Ditch, and what I'm trying to do is where this dark and this light meet, I'm trying to keep my needle right on that mark there, as close as I can. And I will tell you flat out, I've seen a couple of show quilts. That's people entering their quilts in contests, and if it comes out of the ditch, they will stop, cut their thread, start over, and keep going till it's perfect because they're trying to win a contest, right? I have never seen a quilt intended for day-to-day use that didn't come out of the ditch, at least occasionally, and as long as you stay as tight to the edge as you can, nobody's going to notice, and those who notice aren't going to care. Let me see, because I'm pretty sure, okay, let's see, let's get that in there. So I've already come out of the ditch a little bit here, probably because I was talking. Let's get up over here. I've already come out of the ditch a bit, and I'm going to see if I can get this zoomed in a bit so I can show you. Where is it? Where is it? Let's go hunting. It's right there. It's right there. I'm not going to be able to get it too close, but if you're on a large enough screen, I've got this little teeny tiny, like 2-inch screen as my preview. So it's out of the ditch a little bit there and a little bit there, and that's very normal. If it bothers you, it's fairly easy to just trim out these stitches, come back, and then do it again. If it really, really bothers you, if this is like, oh my God, no, I'm not okay with this, then just aim ever so slightly for the side of the ditch that matches your thread. If I had been aiming to keep just ever so slightly on the right-hand side here, then you wouldn't even be able to find those little stitches because it would be a matching color. Do you know what I mean? I hope you guys know what I mean. So do not let the possibility of coming out of that ditch intimidate you. If you come too far out, or it's too obvious, or it's too much of a problem, or it's pissing you off, freaking you out, we all have different ideas of what it should and shouldn't look like, right? So if that happens, then yes, aim a little bit more this side, so that if, just go slower. I don't know if you guys have seen me put this, anybody who's seen my videos before, this is a Janome. It can go, I believe, I'd have to double check, I would actually have to double check the manual, but if I'm remembering correctly, this thing will do 1,100 stitches a minute. So this is slow. There are very few machines out there that I'm aware of. The power pedal, it's literally down, it's a foot pedal, right? The foot pedal here works exactly like the gas pedal on a car. So if you are concerned that your stitches are not going to go where you want them to, and that you are going to be falling out of the ditch too much and all that stuff, slow down. There are some machines, there are some machines that are usually very, very light duty machines. They're not necessarily a machine that you would even be able to quilt with in the first place. There are some machines where it's either on or off. But most machines, even the less expensive brothers, the less expensive, I'm talking machines under $200, still have a speed control built right into the foot pedal. Something else that a lot of let me come over here and do the thing. This here is also a speed control. Have I got it on the camera? Yeah, sorry guys, sorry for the vertigo. This is also a speed control. A lot of machines come with it. So it's like, I'm quilting and it's like, what if I go too fast? I already know I'm going super slow, so I can flip that to the slowest, so that if I slip or get just, maybe one of the dogs knocks against my foot and my foot presses down, so that I can't go any faster than that, to really, really make sure that I'm going to take it slow. So I'm going to move it to the mid-range, because I might as well. I'm going to be sewing at this speed for a while now. So where are we at? Right there. I'm probably not going to edit out the vertigo, guys, because I want to spend my time sewing. And it's okay if you want to speed up once in a while. You gotta do what's comfortable for you. And I'll tell you right now, for some people, sewing fast, it's an oxymoron. Is that the right word? Sometimes going faster will help you get a straighter line. And if that's how it works for you, then yeah, focus on that. But anyway, a lot of machines have a speed control. My little brother machine, I've got a backup machine in case for some reason, like maybe I get invited, maybe I find out about a local event and I want to go, a sewing event where I want to take my machine and do some sewing. I've got a little brother I could take with me, or it's a backup in case something happens to my other machines. That sort of thing. And it's, I think I spent about $250 Canadian for it, and it has a speed control in it. Speed control is not some major feature that's gonna triple the cost of your machine. And now, it's not likely that you're going to have it if you have an older machine. But even with an older machine, your foot pedal isn't just power on, power off. Even older machines, for the most part, have speed control. I keep harping on it because people that are just learning to sew are concerned about that. Because obviously, even right now, if you're even more of a beginner, okay, I'm not a beginning sewer, but I'm a beginner quilter. I do know what I'm doing, but I want to bring my skills in this stuff up to the next level. So the trick here is now I've got one L done. I want to move on to the next one. I need to take all of this fabric and do something with it. So you can slowly but carefully come all the way back to the other end and just start feeding it backwards, or you can just feed it forwards. It'll give you a chance to check the line that you've already done. It'll give you a chance to pull everything forward. And don't forget, you won't lose track of where you're at, because if it comes to it, you just flip it. If it comes to it, flip it over and look for the crease, look for the stitch lines from the back, and you can find them, because sometimes it's in the ditch. Sometimes it's hard to find from the front. Anyway, so I'm just gonna pull this whole mess. Okay, I got that one done. I'm going to take this whole mess, bring it towards me. I'm not moving fast, even though the pins are there. You can still find, you can find fun and creative ways to screw yourself up if you start whipping around stuff and being too careless and yada yada yada. So I just did this side. I'm going to do this side. I'm not going to keep the camera on much longer. How long have I been going? I've already been good. This is already a half-hour video. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break from this. I'm going to get the center done. This is interesting. I put the pin there. Okay. I put the pin in the wrong spot. Safety pins. If you find a pin and happen to realize that it's already been quilted down, take the pins out because this is a 60-inch by 60-inch project, and these pins are less than an inch long, so it's really easy to lose track. So I need to go through here. That pin is really close to the edge. I can take the pin out. I'm pretty sure I can take the pin out. Yeah, that's sewn down. There's a pin right there. I'm just going to be really careful. So I'm going to do that thing again that I showed you, and that is where I take the top thread. Now, I am actually hitting my, I've got a knee lever to lift. I'm actually lifting my foot, making sure that I have this up here. Put my foot down. You're not gonna snag that. You're not gonna snag that bobbin thread with the foot down. Hold it. Down, up. Draw this lightly. You'll feel a snag because it's grabbing that bobbin thread from the bottom, and pop the bobbin thread to the top. I just pull it forward. I pull it forward and get it in my hand because even though it's been popped to the top, your first stitch will push some of this back through to the bottom. And then just do it by hand if you're more comfortable. Oops, everything's shifted. I was right. Get the first stitch in to get everything started. I'm going to back up. Now, not every walking foot will let you back stitch. This one will, as long as I'm not trying to back stitch too much, like more than 1 or 2 stitches. Sometimes I can end up being able to back stitch quite a bit on this walking foot, but I never trust it beyond 2 or 3 stitches max. Just because walking feet are not designed to go backwards. They're designed for the walking stitches to keep the feed even, so you're not getting all that pushing and dragging that you get on a regular foot. So you can just sew and not worry about your tension. Okay, we're going to just bring everything into my lap. Got a few stitches in. Not pulling, not reefing. If something isn't moving where you want it to be, just back up, try again, take your time. Make sure that this is up and out of the way. Fold your stuff in. Now, if you have the time and the space, and or the space, and or a buddy, and or whatever works for you, then some people can and will take this all the way back to another table, refold and rearrange everything, and then come back to the machine. Any system of keeping this flat and smooth and pucker free, because the front you can see what's going on. If the back puckers or gets a little spot that folds over on itself or something like that, you're not going to see it. You have to trust, right? Anything you do that works for you is the right thing to do. Keep that in mind. So, stitching in the ditch. I'm going to stop this now. I'm going to stop this now because what I'm going to be doing, let me just tell you what I'm going to be doing, because I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do this all in one video or if I'm going to have to come back for the rest later. What I'm going to be doing, let's get you down here, is once I'm done stitching in the ditch and getting these done, then I'm switching over to a regular quilting foot, and I'm going to be working from the center outwards. For me, it works better if I go from the center outwards, because if you work from the out to the in, sometimes you could actually have a little bubble, a little thing, and a little whatever. I don't know what to call them. I don't know what they're called. Maybe I have to look it up. But if you start from the center to the inside, if anything manages to shift, you'll have this big bubble on the inside that you then have to. See, it cut me off. It reached my time limit. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is once I get these done, I'm going to be starting in the center, because that way if anything shifts, the shifting will be towards the edges that I can then clean up later. If you start at the edges and work your way in, either start at the top and either start at one end and work your way to the other end, or because of the way I'm doing this, start at the center and work towards your edges. And I'm going to be doing just some nice little friendly loops and filling in all 4 of these sides. I'll be back with that. I'll be back with that later. I don't know if I'm going to add it to this video or whether I'm going to do it in a second video, just based on how much time I have to do this today. Because I just spent 30 minutes mostly talking, so I really don't know how long it's going to take to get the rest of this done, but I'll get it done. And then we're going to start with that, and there will definitely be another video showing that, because walking foot straight lines is one kind of quilting, and quilting foot loopy lines going all over the place is a different kind of quilting. So, okay, so I'm ready to start on my big piece, the big section. This is all one fabric. This was just one giant piece of fabric. I've got 4 of them, and they need to be quilted down. The batting that I'm using is rated for 10 inches, which means that instead of having to put a stitch every 2 or 3 inches, I can go as much as 10 inches between stitch lines, and when it goes in the wash, my batting won't slump. Slumping is, we've all experienced it, like, you know, you put a sleeping bag in the wash, you get it out, and all the batting in the sleeping bag is just all settled into one corner and stuff. We've all experienced it, and it's not fun. So what I've done is I've dropped the feed dogs in the back, because this is going to be free motion quilting for this section and the other 3 sections. So for free motion quilting, you drop your feed dogs, and most machines either have a cover that you can snap over your feed dogs. That is the lower end machines, or this one literally has this little lever that I pull, the feed dogs drop, and then they won't be back until I want them back. So I've got everything started for free motion quilting. I should have done this part. You do 3 or 4 stitches all in the same spot to tack everything down. You don't need that's instead of back stitching. I'll come back later and get that later. And then for this, I've got this and this is already sewn down. If I start at the outside edge and work my way into the middle, then if anything is shifting or whatever, I'll have this big bunched up area in the center, and then no way to fix it because it's pushed into the center. So I'm starting in the center and working my way out. And I am going to take advantage of the generously high rating on this batting, and I'm just going to meander. I'm just going to do a meander all the way out until I get to the end. Because I'm starting in the center, if anything does shift as I'm working towards the end. I'm talking with my hands off camera, but anyway, if anything shifts towards the end, then I don't have to worry about that, because it's a lot easier to fix if it's at the end. If I have a bit of a bunch of stuff at the end, I can smooth it out. I can trim off anything that may end up being excess or whatever, and it's just all around a much better time. Even if something shifts and you can't fully fix it, you have a lot more options if it's pushing towards the outside rather than the inside. So what I'm doing here is just taking my time. And just don't worry if it gets a little puffy. It's supposed to. That's what quilting is supposed to do. Some people will literally come through here and do little tiny circles all through the whole thing, make their quilting really tight. I'm not worried about that. I am just taking my time. And don't forget, like every time you stop, you may end up with some areas, especially if you're new. I'm newer, by the way. If anybody's coming in here looking for like pro tips, you're not going to get that here. I sew for a living, but each different type of sewing comes with its own learning curve, its own requirements, its own thing. So I'm trying to learn quilting Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just shifting things as I go, keeping things in the machine, and just keep in mind that if you really, really hate quilting, there are services where you can take your quilt and they will do this for you. They will either do this for you on what's called a long arm, or you can hire people to just sit down and do this part for you, and you don't have to worry about it. But I do recommend the gloves. Cotton is very drying on your hands, and well, sewing in general is very drying on your hands. So this is very pale. This is beige on beige. So I'm not necessarily seeing it as well as I could be. I may adjust my lighting in a bit to get more light on here. Lighting your sewing area is always an important thing. And I don't mind if it ends up doing this. That's just locking down the stitch. So you're not hurting anything by getting the extra stitch in there. For some reason my thing's not moving. Oh, because there's all this extra bulk behind me. Sometimes you can feel like you're fighting with your fabric. Don't worry about it. Take breaks. Take breaks, drink water. I've just got a lot of bulk stuffed in the corner back here. So as that gets, don't be afraid. Make a full loop once in a while. Do whatever makes sense to you. The more you practice at this, the better you'll get at a smooth line. The better you'll get at being able to incorporate little designs and flares into what you're doing. And the easier it gets. I've got the speed on my machine turned down so that I can't accidentally get going too fast and get ahead of myself. And this is what I'm going to be doing because I've got all the way out here to do. I'm going to be here for a while. This part of the process does take time. There's a lot of bells and whistles you can add, a lot of flares you can learn to do. There's a lot that you're going to like. There may be, or maybe you're going to find out that you just don't like. Every now and again, this is my personal preference because I'm still new. Every now and again, as I'm already adjusting the stuff anyway, I will just lift it up and look underneath and make sure nothing's catching, that I haven't folded it. Because you can get everything's being held together with a safety pin, but if something shifts, you could end up with something folding behind the scenes, and then you've got to come back, pick it all out, and redo that area later. And it's happened to me already on a different quilt. It didn't change the outcome, but it certainly added time and a little bit of frustration to the project. I'm going a little slow, like I said. I've got a beige on beige thing happening here, so my visibility isn't the greatest. Some people like to use a contrasting thread to make it really visible. It will be visible once it's done. Once it's done and off the machine, you'll be able to really see the flow of patterns. Some people like to put a different design in each quadrant, and you can do that. It's your quilt. You can do it if you're following along with this quilt, because I've shown some stuff about how to do this quilt already in previous videos. If you're following along making this quilt, or if you're following along with somebody else's design and just looking for quilting tips itself, my best quilting tip is to remember that it's your blanket. It's your quilt. You can do whatever you want with it. So if you are finding that this is just not making sense to you, but you want to do little teeny tiny circles, and that's what's interesting to you, do it. You do not have to do it the way you do not have to do what somebody else is doing. All you have to remember is to work at a speed that works for you. For some people, they go super fast, and if they try to slow down like this, they feel like they're doing it all wrong. They just lose track. Where you're focusing here, what you want to focus on here is to try and keep your stitches relatively even. There are some really, really high-end machines that has a stitch regulator, which means that every time you move, because they can detect movement based on the tension on the thread. Every time you move, they will adjust the tension so that your stitches stay perfectly even. Most of us don't have those machines, and if you do, you're not watching this video because it's not going to help you. But anyway, I digress. So one of the first things, it goes chunk chunk. You feel the chunk 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 chunk. You can actually feel it when you get both, because you want to use both hands, because I can smooth it as I go. You want to use both hands. And as it's chunking up and down, I just like to move I like to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to move in time with that. We learned it in music class. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay with, keep your motions in rhythm with the machine, and you'll have a pretty good, you'll have pretty good luck if you get right in here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it. I've got a couple stitches that are longer than they should be. I've got a couple stitches that are shorter than they should be. But I'm sitting this close to my machine. Once I'm zoomed out, looking at the entire blanket as a whole, it's not going to matter. And if you do something like that, let's do this by hand. Oh my God, I moved my stitch too far over, and now I have like a 1/2 inch stitch, right? Then just make a loop, come back over that spot that's messed up. You can cut it and start over. Okay, obviously you can cut it and start over. But if you're just doing like me and no, I just want to get it done. I want to function. I just did it again unintentionally. So I'm going to go back a couple steps, come back, make a tiny loop there and come back. And now I've pinned down that spot. When you're stopping and starting, that is when it's easiest for you to get a sudden motion in the machine. It just seems to be that's how it works for me anyway. Anyway, I've got some work to do, and we all know the more I talk, the less I do. So I'm going to end this here. Keep this relatively short. Nothing wrong with that, because when I come back, I am going to have all of this done, and I'll show that to you, and then we'll get to work on the binding. So take your time. If going fast works for you, and it's true, some people go really slow, and that's what works for them. Some people find that they just can't get the rhythm of it, because there's a rhythm, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just move along with that rhythm, right? Some people just don't. I don't want to say don't get it. That's not fair. What works for them just doesn't work. You know, what works for me. I actually tend to go a little faster than this myself. So the one thing I will say is when you start, don't be afraid of getting an extra stitch in place before you start sewing, because it's really easy when you stop for there to be a sudden motion that you didn't count on, and then you get those really wide stitches, those 1 inch long stitches that you really want to do something about. Because usually you're stopping because you want to adjust something. That was my biggest learning curve, is to just hold my shit together. Hold my shit together so that I am getting as even as I reasonably can. But yeah, never, unless you have a really high-end machine that comes with a stitch regulator, don't expect perfection in your stitching. This is what can I get in close? I don't know what you guys are going to be able to see. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see actual stitches, but you've got a nice smooth line. As long as the stitches aren't too wide, you're fine. And if the stitches are too narrow, that's not going to hurt anything. As a matter of fact, some people like their stitches to be really tight. So that's entirely a personal choice. And with that, I had better get going, because I'm going to just sit here and talk for an hour now. If I do that, I'm going to get going. I got 4 of these to do, so I'm going to get working on that. And I'll be back when we're ready for the binding. Bye.